Hi, it's Christiana Gaudet with more answers to your questions about tarot. Today's question, it's another question from Matteo in Italy, and this is an interesting one. Here's what he writes. Today I would like to ask you another question that is bugging me. In your opinion, when may a person be considered a tarot slave? And how would you deal with him or her? I like to read for my friends, but I've noticed that some of them have become totally unable to make their own decision without asking my deck's advice, often over and over. Now, I think tarot is a great tool for self-discovery, and it's priceless when it comes to giving useful insights, even on the future. But isn't it dangerous to rely solely on tarot reading? In other words, doesn't it defeat the purpose of a tarot reading? I would love to know your opinion on the subject. Matteo, I'm so glad you asked. Yeah, I have a lot to say about this. Now, first of all, let's talk about the term tarot slave. That's not a term that I've used or heard before, but I know what you're talking about. We might call it a tarot addict, a tarot addiction, or a psychic junkie, as in this book. Psychic junkie. This is a memoir of someone who over a 12-year period became a psychic junkie. I actually haven't read it all the way through. You can see there's tarot cards on the front, which is why someone gave it to me. And maybe I'll have to read it and do a review. But anyway, tarot slave, psychic junkie, tarot addict. And the thing is, of course, this perspective in this conversation is specifically about use of the cards. But I think we can argue that when we contemplate this issue, it is even more widespread than just the tarot cards specifically. It can be seeing psychics of any kind or using oracles of any kind. I also want to point out that, yes, some people do this. They become tarot slaves, psychic junkies, going for readings, asking us for readings. It's also true that sometimes as tarotists, we can get a little anxious with the cards. We can have a burning question in our own lives, something that's not going right for us. And we can be with those cards all the time. What's going to happen? What's going to happen? Oh, I don't like that. Let's see another card. What's going to happen? What's going to happen? And we come to the cards with that same kind of anxiety. So we ourselves can get into that loop. And I think we all agree it's a negative loop. So let's talk about it, and let's talk about it from the perspective that the person who holds the cards is the person who has control of the situation. So if we're talking about a tarot slave or a psychic junkie who is someone coming to you, someone who is your client, either professionally or as a friend, but we could also be talking about you holding the cards for yourself and coming to them with that level of anxiety. So, what creates a tarot slave? What creates a tarot slave, I think, first of all, is that tarot and psychic work in general can be so uncanny in its ability to be helpful, to be insightful, but also in its ability to predict the future. Now, one thing that drives people to this place of addiction is that they're living in fear. They're afraid of the future. They have anxiety that something will or will not happen. And so they want constant assurance. And so they go to the cards or to the reader looking for constant assurance, reassurance that the future they're afraid of won't happen or that the future they want will happen. That's one thing that creates this problem. And I think this actually gives us a real opening in many cases to be the healers that we need to be. Let's talk for a minute, though, about tarot's ability to predict the future. In my experience, and I've been a professional reader for more than 20 years, the cards never lie. But it is also true that sometimes the future is not predictable. Sometimes you can look at the cards and say, yeah, it is very likely that this thing is going to happen, and this is the way it's going to happen. Sometimes it's, well, this might happen, this might happen. Sometimes it's anyone's guess. Why is that? Because free will is a factor. What we do today matters. And so the best use of tarot, even though it's really cool and really kind of uncanny that we can often predict the future, the best use of tarot comes when the future is wide open. When we can use the cards to say, okay, well, what do I want? And what do I have to do to create the future I want? The cards can give us that information too. The problem is that people are lazy. And most addictions are born of laziness. But this is where we, as readers, have the opportunity to be healers, to provide healing. When we see that a client has become enslaved, addicted, we know a couple of things. We know that they don't have the self-esteem to trust themselves to make their own decisions. We know that they are anxious about the future, that they have fears or desires. We know that they're feeling disempowered rather than empowered. So when they come to us in this context, we have the opportunity to turn that around. We have the opportunity to ask the questions of the cards, not the questions that they want us to ask. Is he thinking about me? Is he going to come back? When will I get a job? I mean, okay, we have to deal with that to some extent, but we can also ask other questions that give us real insight. Questions like, what is the real problem here? Let the universe answer that, because we all know this person is obsessed in an unhealthy way. The question is why? What's the real problem? What does the client need to do in order to feel better? They've come to you because they think the reading will make them feel better, because in the past readings have made them feel better. But they can't feel better right now because they have this anxiety going on. If you can help them sort that out, they will feel better. Why does this situation upset the client so much? What can the client learn from this? In many cases, you can turn this into a real teachable moment and you can offer real help. Now, likewise, if you're doing it to yourself, if you're sitting there alone in the dark with your cards, switch it up. Ask these questions and turn this into a moment of healing. Now, if we look at this from a professional perspective, if you are a professional reader, if you plan on being a professional reader, you will meet the tarot slave. You will meet the psychic junkie. What you do with it is up to you. Some readers take advantage. Some readers cultivate these addictions because it's profitable. I don't think that's a good idea. I don't do this, and I would really hope that most readers wouldn't do this. Some readers will simply fire their addicted clients. And in fact, a lot of readers talk about their right to fire their clients. That's up to you. How you choose or vet your clients is up to you. But my advice is, if clients are coming to you for help, help them. They may think that what's going to help them is for you to tell them 10 times that Bob really loves them and is coming back to them. But you know what? When I go to a doctor because I'm not feeling well, I'm not going to the doctor to tell them what to diagnose me with or how to treat me. I'm asking for their help. Your client may think they know what questions they need to ask, but they're not the doctor. You are. I think if a client comes for a reading, give them the reading that will really give them the information they need, and perhaps they won't be addicted anymore. Now, there are the lazy people who prefer the addiction to the enlightenment. If you do your best, if you try, and they're still barraging you with meaningless questions rather than getting to the heart of what bothers them, okay, maybe at that point you need to fire them. But here's the thing. Never let a client or a friend bully you into handling the cards differently than you're comfortable with. Never let them bully you into answering questions that you feel should not be answered or should not be asked. You hold to the cards. You're in control of the situation. So, what do we learn from all of this? Tarot slavery, tarot addiction, it exists. It's born of low self-esteem. It's born of fear. It's born of the fact that the work we do is so good, people sometimes want to use it as the easy way out rather than the way to growth. Most of us want to help our clients and want to use this work as a way to growth. My argument is that a lot of the time we can help our clients grow in a process that gets them to be more real about who they are and what they want, that helps them to release their fears, their anxieties, and their behaviors that no longer serve them. If we can do that in a reading, they will no longer be slaves. They will no longer be addicted. They will become empowered. And that's our goal, isn't it? Empowerment. Thanks again, Matteo, for another great question. And if you have a question about tarot, please send me an email.